Good evening and welcome to Mindful Live 173. Are we at right now? It is the 20th of January. Welcome in the year of our Lord 2023. We're talking electricity prices this evening, bill prices, because here in Trinidad and Tobago, they want to raise our electricity prices. Now, bear in mind, as regularly people on the more favored side of raising prices point out, we generally have some of the lowest electricity prices in most places in the world. So that is a caveat to have there. But I think, and we will see someone point that out also further on, but I think that's a kind of so what point. Yes, I think it's very important to understand context. You know, you understand the relativity of everything going on around. You understand perspective. Yes, we have lower prices compared to other places. But that's not reason enough to raise the prices. It's like if you're in a home with a good father and a good mother and they give you 3 square meals and snacks in between, and they're saying, yes, there are some families where the children are starving. Yes, that is true, and it has some importance in understanding perspective, but that's not saying that the parent should be starving this child. So similarly, low electricity prices compared to global standards isn't automatically saying that we should raise the prices. If we could have the lowest prices in the world, won't that be a good thing? The TNTech increase has no justification, Scafty says. It is to cover the government non-payment to TNTech. And that is the aggravation many people seem to be having. Many people understand, many people have read, they have seen many articles where we see that what has TNTech so much in the red is actually that the government owes them money. And it's strange seeing that the government is the institution, the organization that runs TNTech, but the government who owns TNTech is the one who owes TNTech the most money. So you could be wondering, okay, the government is owing TNTech, that puts them in the red, and now they're saying that they need to raise the prices to balance the books. Well, then maybe they need to collect the money that the government is not paying them. All right, let's jump into that article on this after a bit of a consultation out there in Makoya. Wicked and heartless. All you're too wicked. Tensions ran high at the Regulated Industries Commission's public consultation on the proposed electricity rate increase on Tuesday, as dozens of citizens rejected the RIC's recommendations. What was intended to be RIC's first open call to the public and customers of electricity provider TNTech to offer recommendations and give a preview of what TNTech's new monthly bill could look like, quickly turned into a shouting match as people blasted TNTech's service and the RIC. Wicked, heartless, and unnecessary was how several people described the RIC's proposal to increase rates at every tier, introduce a 4th tier, increase customer charges, and move from a bi-monthly to a monthly billing system. When the floor was opened to the public at the Center of Excellence Mokoya, many people stressed the poor timing to increase rates as the cost of living was already increasingly high, and that's true. Just so you know, recently some news came out, a 45.9% increase in food from 2015 to 2022, says Economist. Food prices have increased by a whopping 45.9% from the period 2015 to 22. It's the sharpest increase on record and is a cause for concern. Sharpest increase in food prices on record. So nearly a half, 50% increase in the last, what was that? That's 7 years. In the last 7 years, 45.9% food increase. And at the same time you have that increase, you're talking about now increasing the electricity bill also. Now, you see, this is the problem when the government runs these things. This is the problem when the government runs these things. You see, the government now has to justify raising this, not just based on the market, because they aren't running this on the free market. There isn't a competitor out there. Why Nisi? What's the good? There isn't a competitor out there that can offer us electricity supply in the place of Tiantec, and we could see their prices and which one has the lower price and all of that. There's no free market in this. So the government can't really base the price just on the free market. Now, the government has to base that price on the other things that the RIC takes into consideration. But the government also is in control of a lot of people's salaries. So, if the government is in control of my salary, the government is my employer, and my pay has increased by 5% over the last 7 years. I'm just saying, for example, let's say my pay increases by 5%. And now we're looking at the food prices increasing by 45%, and the rental prices increasing by, let's say, 25%, and then you want to increase the electricity bills also by upwards of what, 4 or 5%? How can that then be justified? Because you know how much money I'm making. You are paying me that money. Everything is increasing except my salary. So obviously what you are doing there is you have tied my foot to the bottom of this pool, and you keep pouring more water in and more water in and more water in. And okay, you might say the Tiantec bill increase is only $26 per month. That might only be $26 more per month you have to pay. But that $26 might be another bucket of water into the pool when the water is already on my mustache. The water is on my mustache and I am tiptoeing here. If you put a teaspoon more of water, I might start breathing in water. That's what you're telling people here. They're already struggling with the other things. So now you have to justify it based on that. That's the problem when government runs companies in the first place. One has to look at purchasing power of your wage. Yes, one does. Some said the new rates would be particularly difficult for pensioners and the unemployed. Thus, there should be a halt to the proposed increase, and others urged the RIC to recommend better management at the Commission, as customers should not have to pay increased rates while still receiving poor service. This included frequent outages, no compensation for damaged property when there are outages and instances of high voltage, and when Tiantec conducts business on private property. Where am I to get this money? So people came in there to complain. A lot of people came in there to complain about problems they face with the regular service inside of Tiantec. They were saying, listen. I'm already paying Tiantec a certain amount. Tiantec comes and puts a post in my yard and tells me I have to pay to remove it. Tiantec sends power voltage surges, and when my appliances are spoiled and I call the RIC to say, okay, I'm reporting this, they're supposed to fix my spoiled appliance, it never happens. I don't know anyone who got their appliance fixed, to be very honest with you. No, Scafty says, no, that is when you get people who are not exposed in high places. Tanika says, I think it's unfair that I have to pay for the government lack of accountability. Jeremy Salvery says, I say we boycott them and they make no money at all. Well, you see, that's the problem, Jeremy Salvery. The problem is we are in a monopoly. How are we going to boycott Tiantec? Are we all going to buy generators and lots of diesel and run our houses on diesel generators while we boycott Tiantec? And again, as I said, the problem when the government runs some of these things, Tiantec isn't running based on a free market model. If you boycott Tiantec and they don't make the amount of money they need, their managers are still going to be paid. They'll get the money from the government. That's the problem when the government is involved. These institutions can't fail. You could not pay them. You could pay them. It's inconsequential to the managers. And that's the thing. People complain about the poor management inside of a lot of these state companies, but it's the incentive structure. If I'm a manager inside of a state company, the people I need to please are the politicians who appointed me. I don't need to please the customers. You could call WASA and complain till you are blue in the face. Certainly more blue than the water they send you. Ha! Slapsnake. But you could complain how much you want. That's not going to get the managers fired. Poor water delivery is not going to get the managers fired. And that's why people regularly reach to protesting, because they understand that really and truly what makes the difference in a lot of these state enterprises is when the politicians feel that their political positions are threatened. So if I could protest and rile up enough noise around me, enough to frighten the politician, they might think that, okay, their position might be threatened enough for them to actually do something. That's why people end up protesting. That's why people end up protesting, because you can't affect the WASA managers. You can't affect the TNTech managers. They aren't running on a free market model where bad service means they're getting fired. Look at an example being the Commission of Inquiry recently into the divers. The higher ups inside of Heritage would very likely be fired. What would determine very likely the disciplinary action, if any, against them is the political mileage or lack thereof that comes out of this entire case. If it is successful in making a political stink, then someone might be fired or someone might face disciplinary action. If it seems like there isn't any political currency coming out of it, then they are going to go back to work and it's going to be inconsequential because it's not based on that free market business. I'm starting to think this government is abusing their powers. Well, I don't know about abusing totally, but it's the nature of governance in and of itself. It's the nature of governance in and of itself. Warner hits RIC. You're selling dreams. Listen, Trinidad is an interesting sweet place, eh? Mr. Jack Warner is a former government minister who is currently being pursued seriously for criminal charges out in the United States. He resigned in disgrace from the FIFA. He owns the Center of Excellence, where the RIC, which would be a government commission, would very likely be paying him some rental money to rent out that auditorium in the Center of Excellence to conduct this public consultation. So very likely Mr. Warner is making money off of this public consultation. And then he, as a member of the Trinidad and Tobago public, enters the public consultation to speak on the microphone. I mean, when you think about the entirety of that spectacle, Trinidad is an amazing place. You understand why people could say things like we are not a real place. That's quite something. Warner hits RIC. You're selling dreams. Former government minister and MP Austin Jack Warner was a surprise attendee at the Regulated Industries Commission's public consultation on its proposed electricity rate increase on Tuesday evening at the Center of Excellence in Macquarie. Warner accused the RIC of selling dreams to the population as he addressed the open mic session of the first open-air public consultation. The RIC has proposed increases for clients to pay for their electricity bill. We know that. Warner says, I have come here with a heavy heart. He alleged that nowhere in the presentations by RIC officials had he heard anything about customers' interests. Taking issue with a chart displayed by the RIC showing Titi and Suriname having far cheaper electricity rates than a list of other Caribbean countries as the commission sought to justify the proposed rate hike, Warner said that those other countries with higher rates did not have oil and gas deposits as Titi. Warner lamented that certain government ministries owe TTEC huge amounts in electricity bills as he urged, pay the bills before you come to poor people. And I could agree with that. Okay, you're saying that you need the money. If you still need the money, maybe fine, you'd raise the bill. But how about you get the government to pay off what is owed first? And then let's see how the TNTech bills look. The TNTech books look after that, and if the books still look unbalanced after that, then we could look into it again. But to tell us that the books are not balanced while the government is owing them billions just does not add up to making a lot of sense. Mr. Warner continues, I can't recall the last time TTEC fixed anybody's fridge or computer when the voltage was too high. This claim was denied by Kalinda, saying she spoke from experience. I lost a television and applied to TTEC and I was compensated. All right. I don't think that would go across well with the average person because the head of RIC is saying that she lost the television and got it back from TNTech, while the average citizen in Trinidad knows that if you lose an appliance, you are not that lucky. So I guess it's about who you know or who knows you, it would seem. The utilities minister made a point about the consultations, though. Utilities minister warns against taking UNC bait. Following a very tense public consultation on the proposed electricity increase, Public Utilities Minister Marvin Gonzalez is encouraging the public not to follow the opposition UNC's tactics to create a hostile environment. He also advised the RIC not to be intimidated by the opposition and to continue to listen to the public's views. Speaking to the Express yesterday, Gonzalez says, "I read and saw some videos of the meetings, and I believe that the RIC is trying its best to discharge its statutory responsibilities to the country. I also observed that the UNC in their normal modus operandi is engaging in disruptive behavior by mobilizing their supporters, led by some of their members of parliament, to create a hostile environment so that the media can carry certain headlines." I don't totally disagree with Mr. Marvin Gonzalez. I do see that the UNC is there in those consultations. But I think, as he is saying, don't take the UNC bait, what he is doing currently is actually taking the UNC bait. Because the UNC, by being there in the public consultations, are discharging their duties as an opposition political party. You cannot be angry that an opposition political party, which has members of parliament who have constituents who would be affected by the electricity increases, you cannot be angry that they turn up to the consultations. Now, you could say that they were a bit too boisterous. You could have that opinion, but when you make it seem like they're trying some underhanded ploy here, I think you're falling into their trap to some extent, because I think they're more on the citizen side in this discussion here. Them criticizing the government and asking questions about the increases would actually be lining up with what I believe a lot of other citizens would want them to do. So for you to make it seem like it's just an empty political ploy on their side is not a good idea, I think. It's not a good idea. Yes, they are turning up to the meetings as they should. If you have a problem with them turning up to the meetings, then debate them on the points they raise. Say that the points they raise are empty. Say the points they raise don't make sense. But they should be there. By all means, they should be there. And I found something very interesting. As he's talking about the UNC members turning up at these consultations, I found something very interesting. I looked at these consultations previously, the consultations they had planned. And let's see if we could notice an interesting thing about this. RIC begins public consultations, electricity rate review. This was when they were planning this. The commission is kicking things off with a radio interview. Here's the commission's schedule of public consultations. January 10th, they did a media interview on I-95. January 12th, they did a live media interview on CNC3. January 12th again, they went to the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Retired Persons. January 17th, a live media interview. And now the locations they're actually going to do the interview. They did one at Tunapuna Center of Excellence. And then they're doing a next in-person interview at the regional, or they did it already. Sorry. At the regional public consultation in Arima Community Center. I find it interesting that they're doing public consultations on deciding about this rate increase. And the two locations that they're actually going to where people can turn up are Center of Excellence Makoya and Narima Community Center. It must be that this is just the first round of consultations, and then they're going to do a second round of consultations in Central, and then a third round of consultations in South. Because it cannot be that you are consulting the country in Makoya and Arima only. Mokoya and Arima are how many kilometers away from each other? 8 to 10 kilometers away from each other, if so much. It's nearly the same place. It's in the same regional corporation, is it? Pieces of Arima is in the same regional corporation as pieces of Tunapuna would be. So, how is this a national consultation? Is the RIC not seeing the problem there? All right, I would hope so. I would hope so, because when I was reading this initially, they said after the public consultation, then they're going to redo their recommendations and resend it in. They didn't say that they were going to have a second or a third round. I'm hoping that they are going to have that second and third round. If they do not, that's going to be mighty suspicious. I am just saying. It's going to be very suspicious if the government is doing national consultations on their price increase, all in the east-west corridor. That just won't work for me. I won't understand that. Going on further though, a lot of this comes from government not being very good at running companies. Not very good at running institutes. Hey, look, the Tiantech is in the house. Tiantech, you're all in trouble of late. What you doing here? And one that I am closely aware of is how the government runs the school institution. And it seems like there's some tangling going on right now, particularly between this present government. Well done, Tiantech. Well done. Good place to be. Between this present government and some of the denominational schools. You see, in Trinidad, there's a division. Although they may all belong to public schooling, the denominational schools have a little more control over how their schools are run. Now, something interesting comes of that, because you could look at these denominational schools and the performance that they generally give, and you see a difference in their performance compared to the government schools. So some people might say that it's that the denominational schools get preferential treatment. So what we need now is to take some of that from the denominational schools and give it to the government schools. While some people may say it's that the denominational schools better run their schools, so they perform better. And if you try to take some of what they have and give it to the state schools, you aren't going to increase the level of the state schools. You're just going to decrease the level of the denominational schools and bring everyone down to the lower level. Here's a story, an interesting story I was seeing today. Today, I saw this story. See if I can pull this up. SEA secret revealed. Education Ministry names top 2022 SEA pupil after mom files Freedom of Information request. Hi. Former Gandhi Memorial Vedic School pupil Anushka Singh has been revealed as the top performer in the 2022 secondary entrance assessment examinations. The Ministry of Education confirmed the girl's performance after a Freedom of Information Act request was filed by her mother. Unlike in previous years, the ministry did not reveal the list of top performers in 2022. The decision to no longer publicize the list was made after a mix-up in the 2020 results, which saw the parents of two pupils threaten the ministry with legal action over the awarding of the President's Medal Gold. Amira Biku was originally determined to have scored the highest ranking. Well, we know that from way back then. Following the debacle, Education Minister Nyan Gadsby-Dully, said the ministry would no longer publicize the list of top performers. She said the practice was meant to inspire children to achieve success, but had resulted in unhealthy competitiveness and pressure being placed on pupils. Speaking with the Express yesterday, Anushka's mother Nadia Singh said she requested her daughter's ranking after being told that the child had the highest score in her school and the St. George East Education District. I don't blame the mother really and truly. And I didn't like the ministry's move in this in the first place. I don't think it's on the ministry to try to hide these results so that, we don't allow for unhealthy competition out there. I don't think that's the ministry's business. I really don't. Competition is natural. Competition is obvious. If you're forcing all the children in the country to do the same exams, you obviously expect that competition is going to come out of that. If you do not want the competition, then you have to somehow get them to do individual exams. But as long as you have the same competition, the same exams, obviously there's going to be competition. To attempt then to hide the results of the competition doesn't deny the fact that there is competition. It just attempts to obscure the reality of the results of the competition. I don't think that's going to work. And the mother didn't like it either. This is interesting, and I think that may set a precedent here, where if this happens this year, do you think it won't happen in the next year? I think this right here may be the start of the ministry, the education ministry, just having to publish the results again, just having to revert to publishing the results. If the people want to know the results, give the people the results they want. But it's not the only bit of contention the ministry is getting in. SDMS threatens to sue over teacher recruitment process. The Senator Dharma Mahasabha has commenced legal proceedings to challenge the decision of the Teaching Service Commission and the Ministry of Education for what it calls unlawfully and or unconstitutionally altering the method of recruiting teachers for denominational schools. In a pre-action protocol letter, the attorney said the crux of the SDMS's complaint concerns the lawfulness of a new method of recruiting teachers for the denominational schools. It says the TSC, the Teaching Service Commission, has replaced this method of recruitment where once upon a time the denominational schools basically had a say in which teachers they accepted to teach for them. And that makes sense. If you're a denominational school, you want to at least have some control over your teaching staff, some control over your staff. That's how you keep some control over your general schooling system. The Teaching Service Commission has replaced this method and instead introduced a new system which completely excludes denominational schools from the recruitment process of teachers, whereby the TSC would advertise the teaching positions, assess the applicants on its own, and subsequently impose upon the denominational schools the state's choice of applicants to teach in the denominational schools, subject to the right to object held by the denominational school. So the denominational schools now can no longer have that personal choice over their teachers. The ministry is saying, nope, we are taking that away. And the SDMS is saying they disagree. And it seems like it's not just them. Archbishop, SDMS, fire warning at Education Ministry. Roman Catholic Archbishop Jason Gordon says generations of children will be lost in this country if denominational schools stop existing. Gordon was speaking during his homily at the 60th anniversary mass. It comes a day after the SDMS issued their pre-action protocol letter. Gordon said not only are denominational schools there for the education, but the integral development of children. Meanwhile, the SDMS is warning the government, either respect the rights of Hindus and follow the law, or prepare for the mother of all battles. What do you all think about that? I've heard many people complain about it before, and well, maybe this might be the start of the government attempting to do something about that. It might be the start of the government attempting to take away the reality of the prestige and non-prestige schools. Many people, every year around SEA, you see some people complaining about the presence of prestige and not prestige schools, and the reality is that very often the people that complain the most about the presence of prestige or non-prestige schools are the people who unfortunately did not pass for the prestige schools, or their children didn't pass for the prestige schools. I mean, that's understandable, but interesting. All right, yeah, people have been complaining about this whole prestige school business. The government seems like they are starting an attack on that. Do you think that's a good idea? Do you think it's a good idea for the government to get in between how the denominational schools generally run? For the government to get in between how the denominational schools might preferentially choose teachers? Do you think that would help the education system? Decrease this whole stigmatizing thing with the prestige and non-prestige. All the schools have the same teachers, so it's all the same either way. Would that be a beneficial thing or disadvantage in the long run? How do you see it? I'm looking for the comments in the chat. No, the government should keep their hands off Scafty says. That's one. I wonder what the other people believe. Should the government leave prestige schools to run as they run, the denominational schools to run as they run, or should the government get in there, allow everyone to have, that equality going? Tell me, what do you think? If you're inside of the live, as per usual, double tap that screen, hit that like button. Let's get those likes pumping. Those likes seem a bit like rookie numbers over there on TikTok, only 643. I think we could get some more than that. So double tap that screen. You can do it as many times as you want. Get those fingers working. As many times as you want. Get those likes skying up there, sending the notification out to more people. And we're jumping from education into squatting and business, because down in La Hoqueta there was recently an interesting bit of action that happened. HDC demolishes vendor booths in La Hoqueta. Demolition crews sent by the HDC went into La Hoqueta on Thursday to take down structures residents were building along De Freitas Boulevard and Marjorie Padmore Avenue. The structures were stalls set up by residents in a bid to create a business center in the area, but the HDC said they were being built illegally without the knowledge or consent of the HDC. Resident Crystal Manswell, who also identified herself as the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Entrepreneur Networks, said the plan was to create a space for residents to sell goods and as a way to create something positive in the community, which has been stigmatized as being a crime hotspot. Apparently today, that was not what they wanted. They prefer people to come to them for handouts, come to them for CPEP contracts, rather than become entrepreneurs, Manswell said. Scafty went on, the government should look into these board schools and try to see where they can improve the government schools. I do agree. Look at what the board schools are doing and try to get some of that in the government schools. Maybe that might help you if you think about it. It might. But yeah, the people were squatting out there, starting up their businesses, and the HDC came and shut it all down. Now, the reality is this. Land rights are an interesting thing. I don't like squatting, especially when it's private people's land. If it's a private person's land, squatting is like, no, you're stealing their land. But when it comes to state land, these things get very interesting, because what is state land? Where does this state land concept come from? The reason it is state land is because it was handed down to the state basically by the colonial government before them, and the colonial government seized it off a badness basically. They came, saw an island and said, this is ours now. So to some extent the argument could be made, what right has the state for this land? That's in the abstract. And then you could look at it as a sense of fairness. How many businesses in Trinidad and Tobago started off doing their own squatting, skirting the law, going around the law sometimes before there was a law to really control and regulate the business. But they were able to do it then, and now they are a large business and there's nothing anyone does about it. I've heard regularly it rumored or it said that the land that Grand Bazaar was built on initially was squatting land. And Trinidad laws. Here's an interesting thing about land in Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad laws are set up in such a way that state land that is owned by the state, cannot be bought or sold. It can only be leased, and then it must be returned to the state. So the state cannot sell its land to someone else. Yet still there is private ownership of state land all around the country. How did that magic manage to happen? Many businesses have done that. So I think there is a legitimate argument that some of these residents can have that, listen, we're doing what a lot of the other businesses were doing, and the land wasn't even occupied in the first place. We attempted to go there and attempted to start up some entrepreneurial style businesses, and now you're coming to quash it. But here's also a reality. Here's also the flip side of that. Business is risk. Business is risk. You took the risk of attempting to squat on the land. What risk means is that there's a possible negative that you would face from that risk. The reality is, the negative popped up. Somebody reported them to the HDC, and the HDC said, nope, we won't allow this. So, which side of that would you lean? La Huequeta MP says illegal vending is not the correct approach. After 10 illegal vending stalls were destroyed in La Huequeta, Foster Cummings, the MP for the area, is reminding the public that they cannot simply occupy state lands and property for such purposes without considering all factors. In fact, he said none of the vendors ever approached him to discuss such business ventures. And I guess that's what the lady previously was saying. The lady from the community previously was saying that that's kind of the problem. They have a problem that they don't want to have to always go to the state seeming like it's a handout they're going for. They don't want to go to the state for the state to send them into a CPEP gang or to give them a URP job. They would like the ability to create business on their own. That's not a bad idea, but the problem with creating businesses, generally speaking, you need some initial capital to start off, or then you need to squat, and that's the problem they end up in there. HDC comes, breaks them down. I'm thinking about that, right? So what's the problem? What's the negative that the HDC gets there? It's HDC land, yes, but if you're not using the land, what's the negative you have there? You help business in the area, but then on the HDC's side, they have to look at it from the direction of they have a lot of land all over the country. If you allow people to just go and start building structures on unused HDC land, and you allow them to do it in La Huequeta, who is to stop them from doing it in basically everywhere in the country? Who is to stop people from building on any HDC land anywhere they find it? So I guess that's where the laws come in this whole thing. That makes it difficult to understand, but it is what it is. It is what it is. All right. The final story that I'll be doing for this evening, the final story that I'm jumping to, is some interesting political analysis about our latest senator. Our latest senator came directly from the business community. He was the head of the Shoguana's Chamber of Business and Commerce. Chamber of Commerce. And now he's a PNM senator. Now, this creates for some interesting realities. And some people in their discussion of it pretty much said it kind of blatantly, some of the interesting realities that it creates for. Let's check some of the commentary on this. Okay, I can only now. Swearing in of central businessman. Swearing in central businessman, a good move politically. Following a comments on the appointment of Shoguna's businessman Richie Sukai as People's National Movement Senator to replace the Senate President Christine Kanglu, Independent Senator Varma Dial Singh said the appointment was a good move. He said, as a young person, a businessman, an East Indian, and a Hindu, Sukai would bring credence to the PNM in reaching out to the other races, religions, and other sections of the national community. He will appeal to many citizens. It's a good move politically and a good move strategically because we need business input in most of the bills that come here. So he would have an excellent input here, and I look forward to his contributions. Mark Sukai, former UNC member. Opposition Senator Wade Mark said the United National Congress did not see Sukai as a threat. In fact, Mark said he was advised that Sukai was a former member of the UNC. Just the fact that the UNC hasn't dug their claws deeply into Mr. Sukai says that this may indeed be a wise appointment on the part of the PNM. At least so far, it seems like the UNC doesn't have much interest in getting down and dirty with Mr. Sukai. I do not agree with Mr. Mark that that's because they do not fear him. I don't think that's the reality. I think they do not see the value in doing that right now. So the PNM may have indeed made a political masterstroke in that sense. Mr. Mark went on. He said they're bringing Mr. Sukai to sanitize a government that is totally corrupt. A government that has broken every law that you could think of. And he went on to the regular political rant. This government is doomed. This is a walking dead government. And it is only a matter of time before they reach the burial ground. Richie Sukai could probably be a participant in digging the grave to assist the PNM in its final rites. So Sukai or no Sukai, it's going to be Sakai when we deal with the PNM at the next general election. So we are not concerned about Richie Sukai, Mark said. I disagree. I think in political movement, this is a smart move. And one of the nights before, was it last night or night before, we were talking about politics and political moves, and I was speaking about the UNC and the way the UNC seems to be trapped right now. They're trapped under the current leadership that I don't think that current leadership has what it takes to win another general election. But that current leadership somehow is immovable in the UNC. And they're facing a problem of finding new people to get in there to attract a wider variety from the country. Who has the UNC recently brought in that you think will bring people in to vote for the party that would not have otherwise voted for the party? I don't think there's anyone. I don't think the UNC has recruited anyone recently that would bring some group of voters that weren't already UNC voters. I don't think they have anyone like that. And the PNM here may be taking some of the more prime candidates. And not only did they take him for the Senate, Mr. Sukai is saying that he is ready to serve. Sukai, I am willing to serve. He's saying that wherever the Prime Minister and the PNM wants him to serve, he might be serving. So don't be surprised if he's going up for an MP position in the next general election also. And he's young, 43 years old, unmarried. So it's a different thing. That's a whole new blood. That's something that people regularly ask about. That's a prime candidate for the UNC to be looking for. A young, single, central businessman. You'd think that's a prime candidate for the UNC, but no. Who is the UNC attracting of late? Who has been the UNC's latest addition to their star member team? Who? Politics in the coming years would be very interesting. All right, folks. It is 10:31. If there are no further questions or comments, that's all I have for now. Any other further comments or questions inside of the chat, or is that it and we can dive out? That's it. No further comments or questions. All right, well, in that case, I hope you're all educated, informed, or entertained. And I will see you guys again for the next Mindful Live session, which is going to be Monday. We don't do Mindful Live on the weekend, so yes, all these topics. I will see you guys Monday for the next Mindful Live. Feeling a little stuffy, I'm not sure why. I will see you guys Monday for that live. Be sure to tune in to my different channels. Check out the video I just dropped on my TikTok right here. Head over to my YouTube channel, Nathan Spring, over there on YouTube, and be sure to subscribe. This is all brought to you by Mindful Education, Mindful_education. If you're looking for us on Instagram, Mindful Education over there. On Facebook, where we offer private tutoring, we offer learning pods for all ages. If you are interested in that sort of thing, be sure to hit us up. Until Monday, guys, I will see you all. Enjoy the weekend. Have a good one. Peace. Laters, folks.